There's a particular silence that follows rejection, not the loud kind, but the quiet one that settles in your chest when a message goes unanswered, when a smile doesn't return, when you realize the door you hoped would open has gently closed. Most men rush to fill that silence with action, explanations, effort, proof. And yet, what if that instinct is exactly what keeps you stuck? Stay with me, because near the end of this conversation, I'm going to share a perspective most men never hear, but quietly changes everything. And if this kind of grounded, honest psychology speaks to you, you're welcome to like and subscribe so we can keep these conversations going. As a psychologist, I want to begin by reframing what rejection actually is. Rejection is not a verdict on your worth. It's not a diagnosis of your attractiveness, your value, or your future. It is information. And emotionally mature men learn to work with information instead of fighting it. When a woman rejects you, the most common internal response is urgency. Your nervous system interprets rejection as loss of status or connection, and it pushes you toward restoring it quickly. You feel the pull to explain yourself better, to show more interest, to become more available, or to convince her that she made a mistake. From the outside, this can look like effort. From the inside, it feels like hope. But psychologically, it often communicates something very different. What it communicates, without words, is that your sense of stability depends on her response. And human attraction, across cultures and ages, does not grow in the presence of emotional pressure. It grows in the presence of emotional self-containment. Here's something many men were never taught. Confidence is not loud, persistent, or performative. Confidence is quiet regulation. It's the ability to experience disappointment without collapsing into it or reacting against it. When a man can absorb rejection with dignity, without bitterness and without pursuit, it signals a deep internal message. I am anchored. I choose connection, but I do not need it to feel whole. This is where the shift begins. Not with a tactic, not with silence as a strategy, and not with pretending not to care. Those are performances, and performances are exhausting to maintain. What actually changes how a woman experiences you is internal alignment, when your behavior matches your self-respect. Emotionally healthy women are highly sensitive to incongruence. They feel when a man's words say one thing, but his nervous system says another. They sense when attention is given freely versus when it's offered with an unspoken expectation attached. And when rejection is met with calm acceptance, something subtle happens. The interaction no longer feels charged with need. It feels clean, complete, unpressured. That clean ending is important because the human mind does not revisit what feels resolved. It revisits what feels unfinished, emotionally grounded, and unexpectedly mature. At this stage, your task is not to impress her. It's to stabilize yourself, to return to your routines, your purpose, your friendships, your physical and mental health, not as a distraction, but as a recentering. This is not withdrawal as punishment. It's presence without pursuit. And this is where many men underestimate their impact. A man who can step back without resentment, without explanation, and without disappearing into avoidance leaves behind a very specific psychological imprint: respect. Not admiration, not obsession, respect. And respect is the soil where curiosity sometimes grows, quietly, on its own timeline. There's more to understand about why this works and why trying harder often works against you. But first, let this land. The man she can't stop thinking about is rarely the one who chased. It's the one who stayed whole when he didn't get what he wanted. When rejection happens, most men focus on what they lost: the opportunity, the connection, the imagined future. But psychologically, the more important question is what part of you became activated in that moment. Because rejection doesn't create insecurity. It reveals where it already lived. Many men confuse attraction with approval. They feel drawn to a woman, and without realizing it, her response becomes a mirror for their self-image. When she says no, the mind doesn't just register disappointment, it starts negotiating with identity. Was I not enough? Did I say the wrong thing? If I change this part of myself, would the outcome be different? This is not weakness. It's conditioning. Most men were taught, subtly or directly, that their value is proven through winning, earning, or being chosen. But here's the psychological truth most never hear. Attraction does not grow toward the man who reshapes himself to be accepted. It grows toward the man who knows who he is, even when acceptance is not given. A woman doesn't consciously think this through. She feels it. When a man responds to rejection with self-interrogation and self-abandonment, it creates emotional noise. When he responds with grounded acceptance, it creates emotional clarity. And clarity is powerful. Think about the difference between these two internal states. In the first, your attention collapses inward. You replay conversations, you search for errors, you imagine alternative versions of yourself. Your energy becomes tight, focused on control. In the second, you acknowledge disappointment, but you don't personalize it. You allow the feeling to pass through without assigning it meaning about who you are. Your energy remains open. Emotionally intelligent women are drawn to men who can stay open without overreaching. That openness feels safe, it feels adult, it feels rare. Now, this doesn't mean rejection doesn't hurt. It does. Pretending otherwise creates emotional suppression, not strength. The key difference is what you do with the hurt. Do you turn it into self-criticism, or do you turn it into information? Information tells you this: the dynamic, timing, or compatibility wasn't aligned. Not that you failed, not that you lacked value, just that alignment wasn't present, and alignment cannot be negotiated into existence. Here's where many men unknowingly lose psychological ground. They continue to orient their emotional world around her reaction, even in absence. They imagine how she perceives them. They wonder if silence will make her miss them. They track time. This keeps her psychologically central, even when she has stepped away. The man who becomes unforgettable does something very different. He recenters his attention on his own life, not to provoke longing, but because his life actually matters to him. His days have structure. His goals have weight. His self-respect is not performative, it's lived. When a woman senses that a man's sense of meaning is not dependent on her participation, it creates a quiet recalibration in her mind. Not urgency, not panic, curiosity. She begins to wonder where his grounding comes from, what supports him internally, why the interaction felt calm instead of charged. This is not about becoming distant, it's about becoming solid. And solidity has a strange psychological effect. It lingers longer than intensity ever could. Now let's address something most men never notice about rejection: the power of absence. Not absence as a game or a manipulative tactic, but absence as a reflection of your self-respect. When a man steps back after a no without collapsing or begging, he does something psychologically remarkable. He signals that his inner world does not revolve around external validation. Think about it. From a subconscious perspective, neediness is heavy. It pulls, it demands, it signals dependency, and humans are wired to respond to presence, not pressure. When a man demonstrates that his emotional center is intact, even in the face of rejection, it triggers a form of intrigue. It creates what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. The mind wonders, why isn't he reacting like everyone else would? This is subtle, but profoundly effective. It's not about making her chase. It's about demonstrating, without words, that your emotional gravity is independent, that your choices are deliberate, that you are not available at the cost of your dignity. And here's where most men trip up. They think attraction is built by showing intensity, pursuing relentlessly, or fixing what feels broken. In reality, attraction is grown through consistency of self. It's the man who can sit with discomfort without overcorrecting, who can experience longing without losing himself in it, who can acknowledge disappointment without turning it into a negotiation. That is magnetic, quietly but undeniably. Now, let's be clear. This doesn't mean you ignore your feelings or pretend the rejection doesn't hurt. Feeling is essential. Feeling connects you to your values, your desires, and your boundaries. What changes everything is what you do with that feeling. Do you let it define your self-worth, or do you let it inform your growth? A simple exercise is to externalize the emotion. Name it. I feel disappointed. Then observe it. Notice how it manifests in your body. Breathe through it. Allow it to pass naturally. This process teaches your nervous system that rejection is temporary and informative, not catastrophic. Over time, this builds resilience. And resilience is attractive in ways that words and gestures alone cannot achieve. Here's another hidden dynamic. Absence forces emotional clarity. When you step back, you allow both of you the space to recalibrate. Most interactions after rejection are clouded with expectation or anxiety. Stepping back removes the pressure. She experiences you without the need for explanation or justification. That absence, when genuine and grounded, creates psychological tension in a way that pursuit never could. Finally, it's worth noting that the man she can't stop thinking about is not performing absence. He is embodying presence, presence within himself. He is living his life, pursuing his goals, nurturing his friendships, developing skills, and remaining connected to what gives him meaning. That alignment resonates. It communicates, I am a complete man, and my life is not contingent on your approval. This is the secret most men miss. Not persistence, not persuasion, but presence. Grounded, intentional, and whole. The kind of presence that doesn't beg for attention, but radiates stability. And in the quiet, mysterious way of human psychology, presence can often speak louder than any pursuit ever could. Now let's dive into what I consider one of the most misunderstood dynamics after rejection. The role of curiosity in attraction. Curiosity is not manipulation. It's not about playing hard to get. It's the natural byproduct of a man who has emotional depth and internal stability. When you stop chasing and start living your life fully, something subtle happens in the way she perceives you. Her mind begins to notice details she may have overlooked before. The way you handle disappointment, the calm in your voice, the confidence that doesn't need validation. Psychologists refer to this as the psychological contrast effect. When someone experiences a person as emotionally grounded, yet unattached, the mind registers a combination of intrigue and admiration. It's a quiet tension. She may not understand it consciously, but she feels it. She notices that you are not reacting like every other man who has been rejected. You are present, yet unpressured. You are kind, yet unwavering. This is magnetic in a way chasing cannot create. It's important to clarify something here. Curiosity is not the goal. The goal is your own stability. The shift happens internally first. When your focus moves from her response to your alignment, curiosity emerges naturally. Women are wired to notice men who operate from a consistent inner world, not because they are mysterious or aloof, but because they are emotionally autonomous. That autonomy communicates competence, self-respect, and security, all of which are deeply attractive. There's also a timing element here that men often miss. Emotional curiosity cannot be forced. It cannot be created through text messages, clever posts, or strategic social media updates. It emerges over time when your life continues in a meaningful, intentional way without her presence being the driving force. This is why the man who steps back gracefully after rejection becomes unforgettable, not immediately, but subtly, over days and weeks. Another key point, the way you interact after rejection matters more than the quantity of interaction. A single message that communicates clarity and calm can be far more effective than repeated attempts to gain attention. Your presence is amplified when it is selective, intentional, and grounded. It demonstrates that your emotional energy is finite and valuable. Many men fear that by stepping back, they lose influence. In reality, they gain influence because they become psychologically anchored. Instead of needing her approval, they create a space where she unconsciously seeks alignment with them. This is why presence is more powerful than pursuit. Presence does not demand anything. Presence simply exists, fully realized with integrity. Finally, understand that attraction is rarely linear. Her feelings may not change immediately, and that's okay. Your task is not to control her perception or timeline. Your task is to embody consistency, dignity, and purpose. She will notice this, not necessarily right away, but in a way that lingers. And over time, that lingering impression is what transforms a man from one who was simply rejected to one who becomes impossible to forget. This is the point where most men stop short. They chase or explain, unconsciously undoing the impact of their own presence. By resisting that urge and focusing on your own life, you enter a rare and powerful state, one of unshakable self-respect that silently commands attention. The next step is where the transformation becomes visible, not just to her, but to everyone around you. It's the stage where your behavior aligns with your value and your value becomes undeniable. That's what we'll explore in the next section. Let's now explore the stage where internal alignment begins to show externally, the point where your growth and self-respect start reshaping how she perceives you, even without words. Many men underestimate this. They believe attraction is built by effort, attention, or clever strategies. The truth is far deeper. It's built by consistency, emotional maturity, and integrity in how you live your life. Think of it this way. A man who absorbs rejection without collapsing, without pleading or over-explaining, projects stability. That stability is magnetic because it signals that his life has structure, meaning, and purpose that don't depend on anyone else's approval. She notices it subconsciously, even if she doesn't articulate it. It's a quiet psychological pull that goes beyond charm or physical appearance. It's about presence. Here's what most men fail to see. Attraction is emotional resonance, not transactional effort. When you live deliberately, focusing on your routines, goals, friendships, and passions, you create a form of tension that she can't manufacture herself. That tension is curiosity, admiration, and subtle desire, all rolled into one. And it emerges naturally when you're anchored. She senses that your emotional world is not chaotic, that disappointment didn't dismantle you, and that your attention is earned, not begged for. Now, at this stage, it's essential to maintain balance. Growth without humility or awareness can feel like arrogance. Presence without empathy can feel cold. The men who become unforgettable find a rhythm between self-priority and genuine warmth. They engage in ways that are respectful, calm, and attentive, yet never dependent on her responses. This is the subtle line between compelling and needy, between magnetic and desperate. Most men never learn it because they confuse pursuit with value. Another hidden dynamic is the power of reflection. Women notice men who process life with clarity. When you respond thoughtfully, without overreaction, and when your demeanor communicates that rejection is informative rather than defining, she begins to reassess her own perceptions. She may start to wonder why you handled the no differently than anyone else. That wonder is not manufactured. It emerges organically from the way you inhabit your own life. This is where the final layer of transformation appears, the integration of desire and independence. The man she can't stop thinking about is not the man who chased her. He is the man who continued to expand his life, who maintained boundaries, and who carried his disappointment with dignity. Attraction intensifies when a man's value is self-contained, when she senses that you have depth, purpose, and emotional autonomy. Curiosity transforms into genuine intrigue. Here's the psychological nuance most men miss. She does not need to consciously decide to feel this way. Human attraction is largely subconscious. It responds to alignment, consistency, and presence. The calm, grounded man who refuses to crumble under rejection communicates more about his worth than any effort or words could. He becomes a psychological anchor, a reference point that contrasts with men who are reactive, needy, or inconsistent. That contrast makes him unforgettable. By combining emotional resilience with purposeful living, you create a state where she thinks about you, not because you demanded it, but because your life radiates completeness. It's subtle, but it lingers. It's not about manipulation. It's about embodiment. Being a man whose value exists independently and whose presence naturally draws attention, respect, and yes, curiosity. This is where most men miss the final step. It's not in the chase. It's in becoming whole, visible, and undeniable within your own life so that others, especially her, cannot help but take notice. Now we arrive at the final truth, the part that often separates men who remain stuck in frustration from men who become unforgettable. It's deceptively simple, yet psychologically profound. The man she can't stop thinking about is the man who lives fully, even in the absence of her attention. His life moves forward, not because he's ignoring her, but because he refuses to let external outcomes dictate his inner state. Think about what this does at a subconscious level. When a man demonstrates that his value is inherent, that his joy and purpose are not contingent on approval, he communicates something rare: emotional autonomy. This is the trait most women are drawn to, even if they cannot articulate why. Autonomy signals security, strength, and maturity, all things that create desire without force or effort. And there's another layer: unpredictability born from consistency. Sounds contradictory, right? But consider this. When a man consistently invests in himself, his goals, health, and relationships, but does not orient his life around her reactions, he becomes intriguingly unpredictable. She cannot anticipate his emotional state because it does not hinge on her choices. That creates a natural tension in her mind, a subtle pull that makes her want to understand him more deeply, to notice him, to think about him. At this stage, most men panic. They feel compelled to step back in, to explain, to prove. But the opposite is required: emotional restraint, grounded presence, and unwavering self-respect are the quiet forces that shift perception. The man who steps back with dignity does more than create curiosity. He creates a psychological footprint, a lasting impression that persists long after the immediate interaction. This is why, paradoxically, the right reaction to rejection is not more effort, but less chasing, less explanation, less emotional volatility. Instead, fill that space with your life, your purpose, and your growth. Each day you do this, your internal gravity strengthens. Each decision to honor yourself reinforces the reality that your worth is self-contained, and that reality radiates outward, silently transforming how she and everyone around you experiences you. Remember, this isn't about games or manipulation, it's about authenticity. The man she can't stop thinking about isn't acting, he's living. He isn't waiting for her validation. He's walking through life fully present, fully himself. And that is the kind of presence that resonates deeply, lingers in memory, and sparks genuine fascination. So, the key takeaway is this: do not chase, do not over-explain, do not collapse under rejection. Instead, reclaim your energy, live intentionally, build your routines, pursue your passions, and engage meaningfully with the world around you. Let her presence or absence be a context for your growth, not a measurement of your value. The man she can't stop thinking about emerges naturally from one simple principle: he is complete within himself. He carries disappointment with grace, curiosity with humility, and presence with integrity. And when that man exists in the world, he is unforgettable, not because of what he does, but because of who he is. At the end of the day, attraction is not about control, it is about alignment. Become the man whose life, character, and emotional center are so grounded that her mind can't help but notice. And in doing so, you transform rejection from a moment of loss into an opportunity for irreversible personal growth, and ultimately, magnetic presence. You've now seen the path. Remember to like, subscribe, and stay connected, because building emotional mastery and presence is a journey, and this is just the beginning.